Good evening and welcome to Momentous Live episode 115. I'm Tristan Zupia.
And I'm Tasia Custodi. And this is
NPR.
NPR.
Our esteemed colleague, Gray Williams, is en route, we believe. Our other esteemed colleague, Will Silver, is at an undisclosed location and not able to join us, but he's having a great time. Let's just
Yes.
say he may very well be at the galaxy's edge.
Good hint. They're on a well-deserved fun time is all we can say.
Exactly. It's been a year. If you'd like to learn more about Will and Gray and Tasia and me, you can do so at momentous.tv/links for all our socials for the show, momentous.tv/team for links to all our individual socials, and of course, momentous.tv/podcast for our newly minted audio-only experience. And as such, we were working on our audio quality and our vocal delivery and our microphone technique.
And you will notice mine will go in and out as I get more excited or irritated with today's topics.
In the meantime, you can find us at 1-900 Momentous Live.
1-900 by episode 2000 will have audio locked and loaded.
For only $3.99 a minute, you can get this piped right into your earballs. Okay, Tasia, big day today. Well, it was a big day yesterday, and we're finally getting to it. Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference 2023.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
WWDC, yes, it was. What have you been doing all day since absorbing all that occurred yesterday? I know that we were texting back and forth throughout the keynote.
Well, that's why I said, geez, was it yesterday? Because I've been still immersed in all of the Apple keynote goodness today, writing my script for this video this week that's going to recap the biggest announcements, many of which we're going to talk about today. The worlds are colliding.
It's going to do in 12 minutes, which takes us over an hour to get through here somehow.
Exactly.
That is your gift. All right. Well, let's jump into it, shall we? And hopefully Gray can join us when he's able. But let's start with hardware. We're going to talk about the hardware announcements, then we'll get into the OS, the operating system announcements, and then the big boy, the big announcement that everyone was waiting for.
Wonder what that could be.
Who knows? And speaking of big boys, it's none other than our esteemed colleague Gray Williams, who we were just hyping not yet a minute ago. Gray, we're just getting into the hardware announcements from WWDC. We're starting with the 15-inch MacBook Air. I have to say, this is something that I've been looking forward to because I've been loving my 13-inch M1 MacBook Air, been rocking PowerBooks and MacBooks of different sizes over the years, gone big boy, gone little boy. And the 13-inch M1, it's very capable, nice and light. But sometimes you just need a little more screen real estate, but you don't necessarily want to pay the pro price. And Apple hasn't had a larger laptop available, a non-pro laptop, in years and years and years. I can't even remember the last time they had a non-pro laptop as big as 15 inches.
Not even the pro price, but also you don't want to be lugging around that weight, because the whole point of the Air is it's light as air, baby. You can take it with you wherever you go and bang, this is huge. This was one of my favorite announcements, to be honest.
And it was widely rumored, and I'm glad we weren't disappointed. So with the M2 architecture, it now supports up to 24 gigabytes. And it's got all the usual spec boosts that one might expect. Now, this hasn't been a huge jump in performance between the M1 and M2, as we've noted on some of the other devices that have come out that have made that transition. But it's still, a nice little upgrade. But the biggest upgrade, of course, is the screen size. They've added a couple extra speakers, with force counseling woofers, but a lot of the other specs remain the same. including the fanless design, the 3-mic array, and so on. Uh, Gray, I think you've been rocking a MacBook Pro for a while, the 16-inch, after you upgraded from your ill-fated 16-inch Intel MacBook Pro. What are your quick impressions on this 15-inch MacBook Air and the slot it fills in Apple's lineup? Oh, can't hear you. Sometimes you got to flick a switch to get that audio going.
He's just teasing us,
He's just exactly.
He appeared and was like, "I'm not going to give you all the goods."
So, like the other MacBook Airs in the lineup, the previous 13-inch M1 MacBook Air and the updated M2 MacBook Air, we've got the standard limited array of ports, just a couple of USB-C 4 slash USB-C slash Thunderbolt 4 ports, and but no SD card readers or HDMI or anything like that. They brought it up to Bluetooth 5.3 from 5.0 in the M1 models, and it's got the same Wi-Fi 6 as in the 13-inch M2. Again, reasonably light. It's about 0.6 pounds heavier than the 13-inch model. So, Gray, so as mentioned, you've been rocking the Pro, the M1 Pro Max, I believe, which is a very hefty. And do you see, I mean, it's a very capable machine, and for some of what we do day to day, maybe even overpowered. What's your take on this 15-inch MacBook Air and how the spot it fills in Apple's lineup? And do you see yourself getting one of these for those lighter days?
I'm not going to get a second notebook, no. But this is also overpowered. That's the problem with the entire Mac lineup right now, is that it's all overpowered. I don't know what it would take for me to upgrade this MacBook Pro. It's insanely fast at everything, except of course, running Elgato Wavelength, which has crashed on me 3 times in the last 10 minutes. I blame the software update where they allow you to import things back and forth from Windows. That's the issue right there.
It's a bad time.
Like, looking at this, probably the biggest problem that we're going to have right now is a lack of manila envelopes to put these things into. It's that would actually
and a lack
be a
of
really
reason
nice
for people
touch.
to upgrade, because these things are so capable for so long as well, right?
Yeah. So, and I mean,
good though. This is
Apple's
what we
been leaning
want.
in. Yes, Apple's been leaning into the services, which I'm happy to pay for services if the appliance that runs the services can run them fine, and we don't have to upgrade on a regular basis. And I think that's exactly where we are. The upgrade path is, we're going to talk about later in the show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Tasia, you're also rocking the MacBook Pro, the 16-inch. What do you see any people? Can you think of any people in your life that maybe the 13-inch was too small for? They wanted a bigger screen. Traditionally, in the Windows world, if you wanted a 15-inch screen, you can get them cheap, but they often have like 1366 by 768 pixel displays, which are like hot garbage. And this is something.
Garbage best.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Display. It's called the power of the M2 with the battery life. You're looking at like 15, 16 hours. I mean, the reported battery life, but still, these things go for a long, long time. Can you think of, if not for yourself, anyone in your life that this might fit the spot for? They're looking for a bigger screen, but they don't need the power of the MacBook Pro.
Honestly, most people. Because I feel like for me, if my job wasn't what it was with like video editing and all that kind of content creation, I would get this MacBook Air. I don't need it. I'm like with Gray on this, where it's like, I'm so happy with my machine. I love her so much. And so it's just like, I don't have an excuse. Like, I don't need another, you know what I mean? And when I travel, I still take this baby with me, like when I need to. So, but if I did not have the job I would have, that would be my everyday driver, which is crazy to say that about a MacBook Air, but it would be.
Yeah, for me, it came down to just being really honest about how hard I actually work machines. For years and years, I would get like top of the line. I remember my first new Mac was in 1998 as a PowerBook G3, the Wall Street codename one, with the 300 megahertz G3 model. And it was like 7,500 Canadian retail. It's like, what? And I upgraded from that to the titanium PowerBook G4, the top of the line, which, was a mere $5,000 retail at that time. But as time has gone on, I've decided, actually, maybe I don't like all the things that I want to do and aspire to do, I'm not necessarily doing. And if I like say, I'm not editing 4K video footage, for example. And if I was to do that, actually the M1 can do that reasonably well. And I also have an iMac. That's why I'm waiting for a
Yes,
new
you've been
27-inch
waiting.
iMac.
You have been waiting so long.
Anyway, the little
They're
24
gonna go
M1
32.
is the 24-inch. Yeah, it's not cutting it. And the Mac Studio, maybe even a Mac Mini will do it. But anyway, we're not going to rehash that whole thing right now.
I'm betting on a 32-inch iMac.
Oh boy.
Oh.
Yeah, for the low price of $39.99. That's all we need.
All right, let's send extra.
So let's move on to. We've got so much to talk about. Let's move on to our other hardware announcements quickly here. Mac Studio 2023 first look. So again, the Mac Studio, which was a new form factor for Apple, the M1 has served people well for. Has it been a year or has it been 2 years now? I've lost all track of time. 2 years. Wow. People have enjoyed it. Some people have been concerned because the fan seems to run at about 2,000 RPM at all the time. And if you're in a quiet office, you can notice it's still pretty darn quiet, but it's a much awaited upgrade to the M2. And it's not just an upgrade to the M2, but they also added M2 Ultra spec to it. So the previous one, you could get the M1 Pro or the M1 Max chips. Well, the M1 Ultra is kind of like two M1 Max chips stitched together.
Fused.
Yes. And as such, now supports up to 192 gigabytes of unified memory. So for those for whom the Mac Pro was maybe overserving them, they didn't need all the expansion slots, for example, the Mac Studio has been very capable. And this, I think, furthers and strengthens the case for the Mac Studio's place in the lineup. Gray, any thoughts on the Mac Studio?
What a delightful device. Like, this is an appliance, right? Like, this is
Let's
designed
look
for
at
labs everywhere. It's I mean, considering the amount of time I take this thing off the stand, I should actually be a Mac Studio customer. I should have an iPad Pro and I should have a Mac Studio, and that might be what I do. See, that's where I would actually have the MacBook Air, the Mac Studio. Yeah, it's just, they should just take a kidney now.
As long as you can find a monitor setup that it's high enough to let you slide that little boxy boy underneath.
You should see what I've got going on here. There's gas lifts and things. We're up and down all over the place. Like, it's fully automated.
So to that point, Tasia, if in your next round of upgrades, would you consider a desktop machine, whether it's something like an iMac or an updated iMac or a Mac Studio, and then going for a thin and light portable, such as a 15-inch MacBook Air, if you needed that portability but didn't need necessarily that grunt on the road?
I'm waiting. I too am waiting for an iMac. So the wait continues.
It's hard to find the right screen.
I know, but I say that like it's like, oh, ho hum. I love my MacBook Pro. So, I'm going to be like you guys where I just start collecting all the things. Like, I'm not going to get rid of the MacBook Pro. I would just also get an iMac. It's bad. This is bad.
This stuff. Isn't it neat?
Advice from us.
That's how you build your museum.
Yeah, exactly.
You're curating a collection. So one of the things that the Mac Studio has been doing, however, is putting pressure on the justification for the existence of the actual Mac Pro. And at WWDC last year, John Turnus, one of Apple's executives, said there's only one more Mac to update in this lineup to bring it from the Intel architecture to Apple Silicon. Apple had originally said it was going to be a tier transition. Well, we're at 3 years now, and they've finally just announced the Mac Pro 2023 powered by the M2. Some people were thinking maybe they were going to wait for the M3, which will be on the 3-nanometer process for additional efficiency and whatnot. That efficiency is more critical for portable devices. So maybe the next round of the MacBooks Pro, when they eventually come, if TSMC is ready with the M3 chips, with that the smaller dies, and it will get better battery life and better power, processing power per watt. But in the meantime, when you're plugging these bad boys in, the efficiency it's a nice to have. It's nice when you don't have fans screaming so much. But this one has 3 giant fans, largely cooling down empty space inside this thing, because you can no longer upgrade the graphics cards. There are PCIe slots, but they're for other use cases. So a lot of people use Mac Pros for, say, audio production and engineering, and that's great. But because of the Apple Silicon architecture, they have integrated GPUs, and Apple has not figured out a way to be able to add additional GPUs, be they from AMD and especially not NVIDIA, with whom they seem to have not been getting along for the last half a decade or more. So it's a lot of people are kind of confused about this Mac Pro, and it's kind of like they just swapped out the Intel guts, put the Apple Silicon guts, and there you go. It looks the same. It's got your Nouveau cheese grater. You can even use the same $400 US wheels on the bottom, or is it the feet? It was the wheel $700. I can't remember. They were both a lot of money for the feet or the wheels. Great. Does the Mac Pro need to exist now that we have such a powerful Mac Studio?
In this format, absolutely not. When you said 3 enormous fans inside, it cut to the picture of that guy, and I was picturing 3 Apple fans inside them. Yeah. The code name for this project was actually okay, we guess. It's so uninspired.
There you go. You wanted it, and now here it is.
Like, if you have to, I guess it's fine. Here, shut up already. I would love to know the use case for these that the studio doesn't fit. Obviously, like, because there are folks out there that are doing this right now through Thunderbolt with external devices.
Yeah.
So having all that in one case, that took a lot of engineering time to get there. Hope it's worth it. I'm sure it is. These are the folks doing like AI neural net development and so forth. But it's another world.
But the thing is, like,
academia is going to eat these things up.
But the AI work that largely leans on graphics cards, and you can't put graphics cards in this and use them, right? Like you're relying on Apple's integrated GPUs. So
neural net programming can be done with the cores in the M processors, and there's a bunch of stuff that's going to be coming out in the next 6 months that's really going to rip on these things. You know how like crypto never really took off on the Mac platform? AI is going to. There's enough folks in the space that it'd be happening.
Fingers crossed. So the it's exactly the same chassis as before, and to be fair, it's only the second iteration in this, so they got to recoup their R&D in here. And like I said, a lot of folks in the audio industry will be using this and will appreciate the move to Apple Silicon, especially since a lot of the software has finally made that transition itself. But I can't help but think that this is becoming an increasingly niche sort of product. One of the other things is that you can expand it up to 192 gigabytes of RAM, because that RAM is integrated on the processors. So with the integrated memory, so if you wanted to put more RAM, you would need more processors and more cores, and that would increase the cost even more. The previous generation Mac Pro with the Intel power, you could spec it up all the way up to 1.5 terabytes of RAM, because the RAM was separate from the processor cores. So in some ways, this feels like a downgrade, because you can't throw obscene amounts of RAM like that in there. You could spec the top end one up to, like, I think $70,000 US. This one tops out at only about $12,000 US, because there's only so much upgrading you can do from Apple, which that seems like a huge change, because Apple likes to get their margins from all the different little upgrades. So you can I think throw the drive up to 8 terabytes, and like I said, the RAM up to 192 gigabytes with the according appropriate number of cores associated with that. Yes.
They are leaving upgrade room for the next line in the Mac Pro line, which is the Mac Pro Max. So
exactly, Mac Pro Max,
just
Ultra.
Tight name.
Now, one of the interesting little details that they mentioned in talking about the Mac Pro, so you remember on the Intel version of the Mac Pro, they talked about this specialty card for certain types of video processing. It was called an afterburner card. And that would really juice up your video editing and rendering, decrease your times, make you much more productive. And that's why some firms are willing to throw obscene amounts of money at this sort of hardware just to, for additional productivity. It turns out that I believe in the maximum configuration, the power of the multiple M2s, M2 Ultras, is as powerful as 7 afterburner cards, which is wild. And those afterburner cards were like $2,000 each. So the amount of value, the extra horsepower you're getting for this, starting at $7,000 and going up from there for the max configuration, but it's just tells you how much of a leap it was going from the Intel architecture to the Apple Silicon architecture when you can get the power of 7 afterburner cards with your M2s. I mean, that's kind of wild. You don't see gains like that.
Angry Birds really well
very often. Exactly. All right, Tasia, any thoughts? I know you're probably not in the market for one of these bad boys, but
this is so beyond what any of us need.
But it would be kind of cool to have, right?
It's not beyond what any of us need.
What's that?
iOS 17.
iOS 17. She's gently nudging us along as we have.
Because I love it.
Some of us have a date at just after 8 p.m. All right. Since you love iOS 17 so much, Tasia, why don't you walk us through some of its key features?
Okay, well, let's start with the 3 main changes. Well, the 3 main app differences we're going to see. We saw stuff in the phone app that's happening, in messages, and in FaceTime. So in the phone app, this is a game changer. When somebody's leaving you a message, because we all ignore calls now. It's not just me, right? This time, as somebody is leaving you a message, in real time, it will be transcribed on your screen, which then you can decide to answer the call. It's wild, you guys.
This is known as the Gwen Stefani protocol. She screens for phone calls. I love it.
It's all your fault.
Right? It's so good.
Yep.
And then just that added little oh, actually, you know what? I am going to take this is.
And that feature, they say it's only available in Canada and the US so far. The question is Apple cutting the carriers out of this? Are they taking over? Is your phone actually answering the call and doing its own onboard?
That would be sexy.
Onboard voicemail and hence the transcription? Because otherwise, how is it accessing the voicemail system as someone is leaving the message?
This is exactly
going on
what
behind
I
the
was
scenes?
thinking.
Yeah, unless it's done in real time, which I like. Yeah, that's doable.
It's saying
it's doing on-device rendering.
Yeah, real-time transcription. And I was thinking the exact same thing. Wait, as they're leaving a message, I can you guys remember when we had home phones?
Hey, I still have 2 of those.
Downloading Doom.
I'm here. This is holy, love it. One of the best changes, I think, in my humble opinion. But that's not all.
Well, hold that thought, because one thing that breaks my heart, there are still some people that don't pay the extra couple bucks a month for visual voicemail. And that was one of the key innovations of the original iPhone back in 2007. Some people are still dialing in to access of voicemail messages, but with visual voicemail, and because it's, it can be an extra $2 to $7 a month, depending on, who your carrier is. But with visual voicemail, you can see your voicemail messages like emails and listen to them, a la carte, rather than to have them dial in like a dog. And then, one of the features they've added in the last couple of years is the transcription of those voicemail messages after the fact, not in real time like this cool new feature. So this is, for anyone who is still doing the dial-in voicemail, again, maybe it's because we're not doing so many calls nowadays and people just text anyway. It's not that big a deal, but it is definitely a pretty whiz-bang feature. Do go on,
people were still doing that. So, moving on to the Messages app, there's actually a few things going on in here. Basically, there's going to be some updates to search, so you'll be able to filter your searches a little bit better. Now, beside the message bar at the bottom, you're going to access all your apps differently. There'll be a plus symbol by that, and that's I want to call it a shelf. I'm not really sure what it's called, but you'll be able to just tap that and then first that comes up on the left-hand side is going to be a row of like your most used shares, basically. So like the things you share the most. Then if you swipe up again, you're going to have access to like all the other apps that you can share from.
The idea being that it clears up a whole bunch of real estate for you that's there persistently,
Yes.
right?
That's always there. So they're there. They're just now in a neat little package, if you will. Also, there's going to be another new gesture, which is really exciting that was kind of glossed over, but like right now I find it a little cumbersome when you're wanting to like do replies and stuff like that. Now from a message in line, you can just swipe on that to access the reply feature, like swipe on somebody's individual message and reply, which saves a bunch of time. There's updates to stickers. So everything's kind of now like reorganized in what I'm probably mistakenly calling a shelf, but stickers there. You can even turn all of the emojis into stickers that you can, I call it a drag and drop. They call it something else, but you can basically hold, drag, and drop on to have as like a reaction now to people's messages. Your photos can change into stickers. So you guys remember, was it with iOS 16 when we could remove the subject off the background of a photo? Was that iOS 16, I think? So now they're basically taking that, theoretically, like vision that, but from your photos, you can now do that same kind of tap and hold and drag and throw on your image as a sticker now.
Try that over RCS.
Wild times, you guys. So there's a lot going on. Then we move on to updates with FaceTime, the biggest one being finally we can leave a video message. So when somebody doesn't answer your FaceTime call, you can be like, hey, just looking really cute. Like, wanted to know what you were doing. Or like, hey, look at what Poppy's doing. She's so cute. She misses you. Haha, call me back. Or if something cool was happening and the person doesn't answer the call, you could be like, look, you're missing this. Like, call me back immediately. Where has this been our whole life?
This is visual voicemail.
Huh?
Visual amazing. It's amazing.
Yep.
It's very exciting.
This was my number one pet peeve about FaceTime, is calling someone and like leave a written message or call back or cancel. It's like
cancel.
Yeah. It's all there. The pieces have always been there.
So. Speaking of cutting out the carriers, you're leaving a FaceTime audio or a FaceTime video message there. And it saves. I mean, you could do this. You could like record like a clip on your camera app and then send it and whatnot. But it's just like this. It's all about streamlining the whole process and encouraging people to use these features. I mean, we barely scratched the surface of the features that are in our various devices. Not to mention our software applications on all these devices. But just connecting the dots with some of these things so that we can personalize the experience even more. Because our heads are buried in these devices so much, might as well make it as fun as possible with the things like stickers and these voicemails. So what's standby mode then?
I'm calling standby like basically Apple's response / what do you need like an Echo Show for anymore type situation. It's kind of like it turns your phone, if you turn it horizontally and you have it charging, I believe are the two things that have to happen. It's going to go into what they're calling standby mode, which is like, like a display. So you could have your widgets, your customized widgets up there. You could have your music up there. You could have timers. You could have calendar. You can have, a snapshot of your day. I mean, the clock even. So like picture it like a souped up, alarm clock by your bed that will automatically adjust as it gets dark for the light, and then it's supposed to do like a little red tone or whatever for the numbers so that it's not, so it's good for sleeping and it's not like the blue light coming at you type thing. But just very interesting. What they're aiming for here with standby mode is essentially like making your phone useful all the time, not just when it's in your hands. They literally want us so ingrained in this ecosystem that it's like, it's not good enough that we're using the devices in hand. We also need to be able to use them not in hand, which, listen, there's a lot of applications for that. When I'm cooking in the kitchen, when I got stuff going on, there's a lot besides just, a pretty looking clock like they like to show in the examples by the nightstand. But
to be fair, I love the design of this clock face. It looks like an old school, like on a boulevard or West clocks or something like that with the stretched out horizontal lines on there. It's so they're really using their design chops to make it not just they could have just like farted something out there, but they really took the time to make them look nice. And it's kind of the similar functionality to nightstand mode on our Apple Watches, right? But using the larger real estate of the iPhone. Now, a couple of things. One is that this is not available on iPad OS 17. So maybe we'll see an iPad OS 18 because that's a natural fit for the iPad. And we saw that with the Google Pixel tablet. You stick it to the mount that comes with it, and the crazy price. We talked about that a few weeks ago. But speaking of mounts, I mean, this is like another whole area for third-party accessory makers to exploit for people who want to mount their phones sideways, and maybe next year their iPads, just to
Which
take
it
care
looks
of
it does
standby
look
mode.
really pretty, like to your point. So that's the other thing to like tell people is like you need to have a charger / mounting dock that looks like this one they're showing, or is that one they're showing, and that's how this is going to work. So like at least as of right now, you can't get into standby mode by just placing your phone down like on the counter, like it has to be what they said, charging and horizontal, which is interesting, which makes sense. But I feel like that's just the first step. And then probably in either minor upgrades or by the time we get to 18, it'll be like, they'll know if it's a hit or not. And then you'll be able to do it, maybe not charging, but still on the stand, like who knows, right? Like whatever. But it does look nice, which is like, they're almost also turning it into like a piece of art because like they know it's on our nightstands all the time anyway. That's where people sleep. Like your phone is right there. So it's like, why not make it look like a nice home product?
Bye-bye clock radios. So big improvements to interactive widgets. Widgets have finally gone interactive because in the past you tap on it and it takes you to the app. So now what can you do with these new fangled interactive widgets, Tasia?
Sorry, I was taking a sip of water. I was like, oh shoot. Well, you can interact with them right from your home screen. So like you don't have to necessarily like open the app now to like say check stuff off your to-do list, or like you're adjusting your music or whatever, like, or smart home kind of integration, stuff like that. So it's just taking another step out. Like it's like what we talked about in messages with the swipe to reply. Like it's just make it that much easier, that much quicker, that much more intuitive for users.
Doesn't bounce you over to another app. You can just do it right within the widget. And there's different sizes of widgets that you can. It took the Apple years and years to finally get widgets into they did iPad OS first and then eventually iOS. And this making them interactive is like, okay, finally, now they're getting even more useful. So a lot of these little incremental updates. Speaking of which, AirDrop has a new kind of angle called name drop. Now, what's that about?
So now it's no longer like, hey, can you share that contact? And you have to like go into your contact and then like share it over and then like text it to somebody else, or like somebody will manually write it down. Now, both iPhone users can just put their phones near each other and a pop-up will come up and be like, it's like how we share the Wi-Fi. You know how we've been able to do that for a little bit, if everybody's familiar with that, and someone's, near you, a contact is near you, and you can Bing share your Wi-Fi password. Same thing now with contacts, essentially, which is very, very cool. So much easier. I think you can also pick which contact details you want to share over as well. And another big update with the contacts are what are they calling them? Posters, contact posters. Yeah. Which now our contact screens are going to look different, including like our own, not just the shareable versions or how you're setting up contacts, but your own personal poster like is going to look different now, which is going to be a lot more reminiscent of how we have like our wallpapers on our home screens. So that kind of haptic interactive, like your head can be over the writing, the numbers in the back, like we're all used to the dynamic wallpapers.
So use portrait mode on your phone when you're doing your selfie for poster mode. So what shows up when you call people is as beautiful as it can be. For the personal branding nuts, this is going to be a real watershed moment.
Game changer. It's just great. It just makes so much sense.
And it gives you control over how you appear on people's phones, as opposed to whatever nonsense, because I assign photos to everyone in my address book that I can, but now they'll have self-selected, beautiful full screen versions.
I want you to picture any sales conference, any business conference, any schmoozing. And like now, we're just gonna be able to be like, oh, here,
Boop.
bang, and
Yeah.
we've shared each other's contact info.
No more
Like,
business cards.
no. And you can make I'm calling it a contact card, but you could
Mhm.
make a poster essentially based on like what you want to be sharing anyway. And like, kind of
Mhm.
like what you're saying. So like, if you know, like you're using this, for a business purpose or whatever, like it's wild. It's like, yes, again, coming through, saving us time.
And
What a
not
time to be
requiring
alive.
third party because this, to be fair, this feature has been around in one form or another for ages through third
Yep.
party apps like Bump. But the thing is, you need other people to be using those apps, and so we have some things at the OS level, and then thus Sherlocking those other apps and negating the need for their existence. I mean, it's great for people who don't bother with a lot of extra apps nowadays. So
Like, can
there
you
you
guys
go.
believe we can do all this shit with our phone? Like
Just
sometimes I
barely.
still get it just still is sometimes too much for me.
The isolate subject was the one where I'm like, oh, this is the future. There it is. I don't have to mask a goddamn thing ever again.
There you go. Just
Right?
use portrait mode to make it for the best results.
You don't have to. You really don't.
But for best results, because
best
it's using the depth
debatable.
sensor and stuff. Yeah, you don't want to.
Debatable.
Yeah.
I just take really well framed shots. So
Of course. All right. There are still a few other highlight features for
Yeah.
iOS 17, Tasia. Next up is...
Yeah, there's a new journal app.
Mhm.
Long story short, you can very quickly take all your memories and stuff and pop them all into a little journal app, and it'll prompt you with things like, what were you feeling at, during this time, or blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of neat and interesting. They really are leaning in even more. Apple always kind of does this, but I feel like this conference, they were really leaning a lot into, overall
Mindfulness.
wellness,
Yeah.
mindfulness,
Mental
exactly.
health. Yeah.
Exactly.
I would have said screwing over third-party apps.
Well, that too.
Rip
That
day
is
one.
also
Sorry, guys.
correct. If there were themes, that is also the other theme. Yes, correct.
Day one got Roger Goodenhart on this one. Speaking of which,
Yeah.
Speaking of Rogering, autocorrect won't turn the F word into duck anymore. And autocorrect is, for some reason, since Apple introduced ML or machine learning into autocorrect, for some reason it's gotten worse over the years.
Yeah.
Go figure on that one. But now they've dropped the word, the transformers. So which Apple did not at once during the entire keynote use the phrase AI. They've mentioned machine learning, and which they've done for years and years now, and they've been building machine learning modules such as the neural something or other onto the processor cores. Neural engine, right? So for some machine learning algorithms, but they've never really talked about AI per se, because that, and to people who are paying attention, we've been using AI even on this show for the last year as shorthand for all of the things that encompass like generative AI, machine learning, this, that, and the other thing, whether it's making images or songs or videos or using ChatGPT. But one of the key parts of these generative engines is the transformers. And that's something that was invented by Google a number of years ago. And it's kind of makes the whole machine learning thing even more sophisticated and powers, like I said, some of these language models. So if this sort of technology is going to be powering their autocorrect, maybe, just maybe, it'll do a better job, and it'll learn from more carefully from how you're typing. And if you really want to cuss, Tasia, it'll let you cuss and not turn it into a duck.
And it learns from your feedback. So like you can, obviously machine learning. So like there's going to be a revert option now. So if it does autocorrect it for you and you're like, no, I really want to drop that F-bomb, you can, with a tap, revert back. And then it's going to learn that context of when you're trying to say the F word over duck, and like, it's going to learn that for you. And then the other cool thing I thought is like taking a page out of Google's book, which is like, how could I live without this my whole life, is the predictive text. So now it's going to finish like a word or thought sentence for you, by guessing like what it is you're trying to say, which is like, yep. And all you have to do is tap the space bar to finish that word or thought. It's pretty
all right. Looking forward to ducking around some more with the latest version of messages. Profiles in Safari. This seems like a pretty minor thing, but just like if you want, it's kind of like fancy tab groups. It's like, or can you have multiple tab groups within individual profile? I'm not really clear on the use case for this one. Anyone?
Yeah. Sorry, I was swallowing again too. Yeah, I'm the same. I just
Yeah.
felt like it was kind of like could have glossed over
It-
Oh,
that.
wait. Separating
It's a delineation
personal.
between like personal work and pornography.
Perfect.
Got it. Say no more.
Okay. Another long-awaited feature, 2FA, two-factor authentication codes will work via email, which is handy. So when you get email coming through, instead of a text message with a two-factor authentication code, it can populate what you're doing on your website, which is great. I trust that'll be happening in the other operating systems as well. SharePlay with CarPlay. So if you have other people in your
Finally.
car, they can push to your
Lord help us.
CarPlay instance. If you want people with worse taste in music than you taking over
All
the playlist.
passengers, all of the passengers will automatically get a notification to join CarPlay.
Interesting.
And let me tell you right now, if you're going to be traveling with me, we're going to be listening to who? My queen,
don't
Miss
even.
Taylor Allison Swift. Thank you very much.
As covered by Kanye.
Gray's on board.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. There will never be any Kanye in my car. Thank you.
Airplay in hotel rooms, when
Yeah.
that eventually happens, that seems like a heavy lift from all the different
hotels. So I think
Yes.
it's going to be a super slow, like I see a partnership here with like Marriott Bonvoy or something going on, and it's
sure.
going to be very select, and there's going
Super
to be
8.
You don't have to carry, you don't have to bring your Apple TV with you anymore. Like that's what we always did. And then you got to fight with trying to get it on the Wi-Fi, and they have their own captive
Yeah.
pages, which you have to like navigate through and sometimes talk to the concierge. And it was a whole nightmare, but being able to like AirPlay directly to whatever, something built into the TVs or into their system there. Love it.
It's awesome.
Not that I travel and stay at hotels a lot because, this economy and all. AirPods, enhanced active noise cancellation and transparency. So you've got your active noise cancellation on, and then someone comes and talks to you, it'll automatically, tweak the settings there so you can actually have a reasonable conversation without messing around with your ears. Apple Maps going off, downloading maps, which is great. You've been able to do that in Google Maps forever. And so one feature that's sure to bring us a bunch of more false positives. You don't need to say, "Hey, Dingus" anymore. You can just say "Dingus," and great.
Seriously?
Which is a problem because
I triggered enough as it is.
Yes.
Why are they making it? Anyway.
My watch goes off constantly as it is when I'm not ever even saying that combo of words. So I don't know what they're thinking about. I know. It's reading it through the sensor.
Yeah, exactly. the best is when like you're just your HomePod in the corner just randomly goes, mm-hmm. It's like what?
Oi, creep. Mm-hmm.
But also the other key update to that, I think more so than why they shouldn't have dropped Hey, but the other key update there is that it's going to be much like we're used to from some of our other smart devices, where it's going to be listening for the follow-up question. So you don't have to like re-prompt it.
Context.
Finally.
Just like Chatty G. Gotta love the context.
Chatty G.
That's how they say it in Australia.
Right,
okay,
Chatty
Spotlight
G.
adds app shortcuts. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Visual lookup. Oh, and they're going to be categorizing photos. You can do your not just dogs. It's great that you can identify dogs in your photo library, but you can also identify different dogs, different cats, and so on, which is handy. And then of course you can look those things up. Mental health for the health app, privacy and security, blurring out the naughty bits in any photos you might have. So anyone sending you unsolicited photos via text or airdrop on the subway, it'll protect your innocent disposition by blurring out the parts. Okay,
got a lot of questions about that, but
can we unblur?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, wait. But
how dare you?
Engage manual override. Oh God.
My eyes.
These goggles do nothing.
More accessibility features, which are always welcome. This was previewed a couple of weeks ago, actually. With 15 minutes of training, you can teach your iPhone to mimic your own voice when you're communicating with people. So if your voice is degrading due to one condition or another, and you have a little bit of notice, you can train it so that you can capture your voice as it was. And then in later months or years, when maybe you don't have the same ability to use your voice, you can interact with people and not be doing this Stephen Hawking special or Siri's voice or something like that. So this is a nice way to customize the accessibility a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have questions.
Mm-hmm.
Can we have more than one version of our voice? And if I do voices, can I get my characters to read back to me? because I do a mean Sean Connery.
There you go.
I want that. It's
And then-
it's like GPS voices all over again.
Exactly. Mr. T,
Yeah.
back again. That's wrong turn, you stupid, you crazy fool. Anyway, PDFs in Notes. Okay, you can edit
This was
PDFs in the
cool.
Notes app now.
Yeah.
Cool.
This is very cool
Autofill,
because of
yeah.
the autofill. So it'll automatically figure out what areas need to be filled. And there's also a lot of collab stuff that maybe when we talk about iPadOS, we'll talk about too with the PDFs, but pretty neat update, to be honest.
Speaking of iPadOS, let's blast through this because we still have macOS to do, and then the main event, how iPadOS is taking your iPad to the next level. So many of the features that we talked about in iOS, but not all, are being integrated into iPadOS. Tej, you want to walk us through the highlights?
Okay, I was basically just gonna like riff this off the top
Sure.
of my head. Basically, widgets.
Mhm.
What else they talk about? So again, you can access stuff from like the home screen. You don't have to like go into anything with the widgets.
Mhm.
There's new wallpapers, right? Which
Mhm.
were kind of cool. One of them being live photos now will like when you wake your iPad,
Mhm.
it'll like render the live photo in like cool slow motion for you, which is like kind of wild and just like a fun thing. It's not like a,
Mhm.
you know, whatever. Then there's obviously the health update stuff that kind of goes across devices. Then there's that PDF
Yep.
update, which is really, really cool because you can do real-time collaboration. So this to me is like they're dipping their toe and coming for like my Google Docs and stuff, you know, where it's like I can see
The revenge of iWork.
right. So like first of all, there's going to be like the autofill. So it's going to recognize which sections, lines, blocks, I don't know what the hell they're called in PDFs, areas that need to be filled, and will help you kind of autofill that. But then you can collaborate with others and like in real time as you're, you know, making notations on the PDF or working the PDF, they're seeing those changes at the same time. And so like this is pretty neat. You know, I mean, I'd like to see that across other
Mhm.
realms as well, not just in PDF, but I feel like this is the start for them in terms of like changing the game for like on the go real-time collaboration, which is really cool to see. That's your iPadOS in a nutshell.
In a nutshell. And then one of the big things is the health app that we're used to from the iPhone and haven't had on the iPad yet has been ported to the
Yes.
iPad. And that took a little bit of behind the scenes work to securely sync your health data through iCloud in an encrypted fashion there. So nice to see that we can access all that in a much larger canvas. Okay, very quickly on to Mac OS. The 6 best Mac OS Sonoma features from WWDC 2023. Gray, do you want to walk us through some of these? Again, there's some overlap with what we've been talking about with iOS and iPad OS.
Can't hear you again, Gray.
Oh, we lost you, Gray.
You keep teasing us like this.
Oh, you're muted. Hang on, I'll unmute you. Let's try now.
No, I don't hear him.
No. Okay.
Well, there's more widget changes. That's what he was going to say. Widgets! No, I'm going to pretend I know what Gray was going to say.
Yeah. No audio coming from you at all, Gray.
Basically, you could take your widgets and you can put them onto your desktop.
Very cool. And you could literally, some people have tried, you can actually fill your entire desktop with interactive widgets now, because those of us who struggle with various levels of attention deficit, as we need more things on our desktop.
Yeah, and as you open an app or a window, those will fade in the background, like fade out that distraction.
That's smart.
There was another thing there with screensavers. There's some cool screensaver updates. Don't want to get into that.
Yeah,
That's really
the
cool.
aerial screensavers from Apple TV have been ported over to macOS. There was an app, a third-party app that has now been Sherlocked to do that very thing.
Really cool aerial shots of some locations, and then when you like unlock the device, it kind of just fades like anchors itself.
Yeah, it freeze frames as to your desktop. Yeah,
which is really, really, really cool. Sorry, I jumped ahead on you there, TJ. And then cooler stuff also, and I know Gray would talk about this, is the video conferencing features. So you can now do little overlays when you're doing your video conferencing. And this works across a few different apps, including Zoom, by the way. So you can just do a little overlay, which means you'll be like in a little circle and, you know, whatever. Or just like we could pull out ourselves from the background of images, y'all, if you do the larger overlay, you will be removed from your background, and you can like mosey about and walk around the screen and like point to different stuff and be presenting. And I'm curious to see how well this will render out IRL when we don't have green screens behind us or whatever, or we have a lot going on. But how friggin' cool. How friggin' cool. It's just so much more immersive.
It steps up your production value. Probably
Big
one
time.
one thing would probably help is have a fair bit of distance behind you. That would definitely, you know, help your webcam. Because
Yes.
some of the, to be fair, some of the Mac webcams are still kind of potato cammy, but at least they're mostly 1080p now, but they're of varying degrees of quality there. So give yourself distance behind you, so it's more obvious what's in the background and what's you. Some of the demos I saw of this were a little janky, like when you're moving your hands around and whatnot, but it's only going to get better, and it does definitely up your production values for when you're doing online presentations or video conference calls and the like.
Yeah.
Hey, we got your back yet?
I think so.
Nope. Oh yeah, we do! Yay!
Oh,
Hooray!
Just in
Yay.
time for game mode. Thanks,
There we
Greg.
go. Because Tasia is not having anything to do with game
I don't
mode.
care about it.
So what is game mode on macOS Sonoma? Oh, did we even mention the name is Sonoma? Yeah. Wine country.
Oh, yes.
So
Everybody gets a case of wine with upgrade. It's incorrect.
We've seen Apple like take a bite into the gaming market with iOS, because it's been incredibly easy for developers to port their stuff over from one platform to the next. The Mac really is just, it's kind of been left behind with just sort of Apple Arcade. And I think Apple sort of made the case, why not have these games on there? You know, I'm fascinated to see if this is going to make a difference. You know, right now you get like game mode on Windows does pretty much exactly the same thing. Takes all that background stuff, puts in the background, stops it from reporting in, stops your computer from rebooting when you're in the middle of a match. This day it still happens. But you know, this is nice. It's a little like low power mode, but instead it's high power mode.
So it's prioritizing the game and reducing latency. So it's throwing as much of your CPU and GPU power at the game itself and reducing latency, and even with like Bluetooth and whatnot. So to enable better, better use of your third-party controllers, like from your Sony, PlayStation, your Xbox, and your Nintendo. So now, you played a lot of Destiny. Are you able to do that in Mac, or do you have a gaming PC for that?
I'm gaming PC.
Oh, no.
So Mac is
Okay.
sitting right here, and then there is a gaming PC with a 3080 and 16 gigabytes of RAM. Some, is it NVRAM hard drive? Yeah, it rips. Like it does 4K 120 frames a second.
Yeah, that's one of the other things they had. I can't remember the developer's name, but the developer of Death Stranding, talking about, bringing Death Stranding
Hideo Kojima.
to the Mac.
Kojima's
It's like,
hot.
okay, cool, but isn't that 4 years old? Like, so the Mac has been so far behind in gaming ever since the loss of Bungie, or the loss of Halo
Bungie.
to Microsoft and acquisition. Like, we've ranted about that before, but
Yes.
anyhow.
Yeah. So
And
now
now
Marathon
the
coming
other-
back.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I forgot to rant about last time is, Marathon's coming back. Cool, but not for the Mac.
Yet.
Maybe in 4 years.
They did have a posting for alternate platform engineers. They've already got Linux on staff. What else could it be? The Atari Jaguar 2.
Right. And then one of our other top features in macOS, web apps in the dock. So for people who have been using for the last 10, 15 years, what are known as single site browsers, or SSBs, where if you want to have multiple logins for the same website, and you don't want to have to juggle different web browsers or incognito mode, private mode, et cetera, you could have a special instance of, say, your Twitter account before you could easily flip back and forth, or your various other types of social media accounts. Maybe you manage some for personal, some for work. Now you can create these dedicated instances of Safari, like we've been able to do with these other SSBs for years and years now, But again, so the Fluid and all the other apps, third-party apps are doing this, and they've all just been Sherlocked now. And it makes it easier to decide, because I was thinking I'd like to get that going again, because I have to manage so many different accounts for work and for Momentous and for personal life, and it gets a bit much. So having this built right into the Mac OS and accessible from the dock is great. Just like you're able to save web pages onto your home screen on your iOS or iPad OS device, also known as iPhones and iPads. So, hooray for web apps in the dock.
Seriously.
Okay, that's it for our software updates. And now we've got 3.5 minutes to talk about everything else. Oh, no, wait, watchOS 10. Real quick, Gray, watchOS 10. We got Snoopy. That's what I care about. We got Snoopy and Woodstock screensavers.
Yep.
And widgets.
Widget stacks from the Digital Crown.
It's watching.
Yeah.
Just ever so much more watch.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm sure there's gonna be another sensor in the next version.
Yeah. Smart stacks, control center.
There's some new faces, and then there's some new updates to like your workout functionalities, I guess is what I would call them. So there's things in like cycling and hiking. A really cool thing in hiking. There's some tennis ones too.
Oh yeah, storing your waypoints in hiking in case you go out of range of your cellular provider, which is handy. Helps you get home. And
it gives you a 3D rendering, so that's really cool. Really cool.
All right, well, Gray, we're looking
like
forward
any
to
type of safety feature. Now, that's something we forgot to talk about. That's fine.
So hang on. Great. I'm not telling you to get lost in the woods, but if you do, tell us how these features work on your
done on
your Apple Watch. What are they called? Is it Ultra?
Ultra.
Right. What did we forget, Tasia?
I forgot about the safety feature in iOS 17. Guys, I can't believe it. Like the murderino in me, it's called check-in. Right. And you can set like I watch a ton of Dateline, and I'm always checking in with like family or whatever, and it's like maybe it's different because like I'm a woman and like out in the world, and that just like makes you a target. So like keep your head on a swivel. But you can set a check-in with someone. So like I could set a check-in with one of you that it would say like Tasia's going to be home in like 15 minutes. And then if it notices like where I'm at and is like, hey, like you're delayed, you're running behind, like you're not going to be home in time, it'll tell you that, and you can like either update that, or if you don't respond and you don't end up back home, your person gets an immediate alert that sends them not only the fact that you are not home, but your last known location, your battery percentage, kind of like on Google Maps, like when you can see like someone's like where they are on a map, like the route you took to get to that last known spot, like, and your cell service, so if you have cell service, so you'll know like, frig, I'm not even gonna be able to get a hold of her. Like she has no cell service. So like wild. I cannot believe I forgot to bring that up. Wonderful, wonderful. Hallelujah. Amen. Now we may move on.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, you just reminded me when we were talking about the watch. I don't know why that popped in, but.
Then back to watchOS really quickly. The mindfulness app is gaining some features for mental health, getting people to log their emotions and daily moods, and especially after the last few years. And some of our various team members have, had very, challenges and tools like over the last year or two. And some of these tools may assist with that. We already mentioned the journaling app, which can help us, kind of take stock of how our days are going. And then apps like the mindfulness app on the Apple Watch can help you log different, how you're feeling. And, and it'll remember all the different things that are, the time of day it is and what else is going on. And, like Name Drop also working on the on watchOS, so you can bump your phone to your watch and transfer contacts that way. So yeah, lots to dig in there, and we'll have links to all the details in there in our show notes. Great. Any quick comments on the mindfulness updates?
I've actually really been enjoying mindfulness. It doesn't seem to bother me at the wrong time of day, so any expansion of that I think is a good choice.
Mine stopped bugging me. I'm not sure why. Like I can't remember the last time mindfulness has said, "Hey, it's time to take a minute and breathe." It's like maybe it's just given up on me.
No, it sees you are the one.
All right. Speaking of the one, we ready for this?
Here we go.
Are we ready for this?
Are you ready for this?
So, arguably the highlight of WWDC, the much anticipated, much rumored, much talked about Apple headset. Some people were calling it a VR headset. Tim Cook has been, it's a VR virtual reality. Tim Cook has been referring a lot to augmented reality or AR over the years. What we've got here is actually a mixed reality headset that lets you dial between both AR and VR. Now, Tasia, I know you've got opinions. Before we get into opinions, I'm going to start with Gray, because he, in a recent role, was a chief metaverse officer, and Apple
Chief
made.
Meta Officer.
Say again.
It's just chief meta officer, and then Meta went to change the name to Meta. So it was,
gotcha.
So at that point, you could just say, "I met the chief meta officer." That's just you met an officer.
I met on the way to the fair. So you'll notice that the Apple never uttered the phrase metaverse whatsoever, just like they didn't say AI.
Boink.
But this device, it's kind of like it's straddling the real world and the virtual world, and has a number of the reviews so far. The hands-on, the initial first looks have been reasonably positive. But Gray, given your experience in playing with the different Meta headsets and the like, could you walk us through some of the key features and your impressions of those features, and then we'll throw to Tasia for her take.
This is the most delightfully over-engineered headset that is on the market. There are some over-engineered headsets, but this thing is it. You remember when Apple said that they would not put the calculator on the iPad unless they could do something magical with it? They did something ducking magical with this thing. Like, it is. I hate it. Like, just from an aesthetic standpoint, I hate it. I hate the ski goggle look, but I love it. It's perfect.
You're gonna buy it.
No. Yes.
I know you are. You're gonna show up to one of these friggin'. You're gonna just appear and you're gonna have it on, and we're gonna be like, "Yep, of course you did."
I'm gonna Ready Player One into that shit. Like, just it's so, like, looking at it from this perspective, high quality materials, right? Mm-hmm. Glass, aluminum, light, machined. The choice of fabrics. It's like they distilled Johnny Ive, removed the pretension, and just gave us the quality. They've thought of all the little things, like all of the pieces of technology that have led up to this, right? I'm looking at, transparency mode with your AirPods. I'm looking at the gesture control that they had with the Apple Watch. You notice this is the same friggin' gestures? Did I not say that this was going to be the case? They were training us how to use this thing?
Even all the AR stuff in the iPads and iPhones over the last number of years, all those tabletop demos that they would do back in the before times at the various keynotes showing, like, building landscapes on top of a tabletop and whatnot. This is all just getting the reps in for getting this stuff on your face instead of in your hand.
There's 12 megapixel screens, right? They are a wide enough field of view. They're high enough resolution. They're high enough refresh rate that it looks like reality.
People are reporting that it's not making them motion sick because the latency is so low, talking about 12 milliseconds or so. Mm-hmm. And the micro OLED pixels, they said, fits 8 pixels for every one iPhone pixel. So they're 8 times as small as iPhone pixels, because these things are so close to your face, they have to be super high res, right?
Yeah. And so, it's interesting because you have the Happy Meal version that Mark is putting out this year. Bless him, right? He's getting the kids trained on a toy.
That's as in Zuckerberg from Meta. Just so we're clear for our mums.
And when we say this is a new computing platform, $3,500 is not out of the question for a high quality computer.
And so this is not tethered. This is a standalone device, and they refer to it as a spatial computing platform. Yeah. So they're going for the high end. They're not mucking around. They're not cutting corners here. And this is not a $500, MetaQuest 3 or whatever the case is, or $400. So this is like several times more expensive.
Yeah. And I would say when this thing rolls, the reports of jank, like we see with the MetaQuest and with the Vive and with everything else, will be next to none. This is as close to the white glove 20th anniversary Mac that they've got in an actual product that people want. I'm fine.
Wait.
I'm fine.
Oh, he's freaking out, you
So,
guys. He's freaking out.
so the initial impressions from journalists from both tech and non-tech outlets have been pretty favorable. People are talking about the very high quality builds of these devices. The software is apparently working as demonstrated. There are some of what they showed in the keynote were mock-ups, especially when it came to the Disney stuff. That was just like proof of
Yeah.
concept sort of things. But some of the reports from the floor were saying like, oh no, what we were looking at stuff that was exactly like in the keynotes.
But that's also something to keep in mind is like they were given that device that was like preloaded with these really locked in, dialed in things. So just to keep that in mind, not to burst anybody's bubble.
And one of the reports from Nilay Patel at The Verge, for example, said at the edges, he noticed there was a bit of jankiness at the edges of his field of view. And so it's, not perfect. There's still, this is still probably at least half a year.
He's got really
away.
wide-set eyes, though. They're like that far apart.
Some of the other things that people have commented on is the battery pack is only lasted 2 hours, and it's you put that in your pocket. There is a tether. They didn't hide the tether in the demos, so that was a compromise. But it did lighten up the headset. The headset is still, people say it's on the heavy side because it's metal and glass. They're not mucking around with plastic. Sounds like it's pretty comfortable. The eye tracking and gesture control is amazingly good. There's 12 cameras built into this thing, along with 5 sensors, a whole bunch of IR emitters on the inside and outside. On the outside, they help illuminate your hands so that you can just tap your forefinger and your thumb together to select things on the screen. So you don't have to move your head around like a dog. You can just use your eyeballs because you got things inside that are tracking where your eyes are going. And so you glance at things and they kind of bulge a little bit, and then you tap your fingers together to select. And apparently it takes a little while to get used to this. Most of these reporters only had about half an hour to play with it. One of the other key things was the pass-through feature, being able to dial in the real world versus the virtual world. And if someone steps into your field of view while you're in the virtual world doing stuff, watching shows or doing FaceTime, whatever, they will kind of break through the curtain, so to speak, and then you can go, oh, okay. There's the whole thing, the uncanny valley thing about the eyes. On the outside, people can see your eyes, and it's like it's a recreation of your eyes based on scans that you do when you're setting it up, which is wild to think about. So there's an outward-facing screen, and to give it the depth, they use lenticular lenses as well. There are so many crazy little details that make this altogether. People are saying that the setup is reasonably smooth. But one of the key things, and I think, Tasia, maybe this was something that you might have an issue with, is that what even is this for?
Yeah.
For $3,500, what is this for? Are we really taking 3D photos of our kids' birthdays with this thing strapped to our face? I mean, to be fair, they might introduce 3D photography to iPhones eventually, which would obviate the need for that kind of dystopian human interaction. Are we really? How much FaceTiming are we going to be doing with this?
Exactly. Well, you're going to look like an idiot if you FaceTime with it. So, you're going to be shamed. But unless everybody's wearing one and using their virtual avatars or whatever.
At least it's not Memoji. That's all I can say. And at least it's not the meta things without the legs, and they finally grew legs eventually.
So it's doing just like it's doing those eyes with the eyesight feature that you mentioned with when someone walks into the room. It actually does a full scan of the face. So like if someone else is also using a device and you're chatting, from what I can understand, they'll see you as like it's you though, but like it's a virtual you, but it's actually you, because
kind of
it's
like
not
the
like
Google Skyline thing that we saw.
Yes. So that's really, really cool. But the whole thing reminds me of like, did you guys ever watch that show Upload? And they put on the headsets and then they're like talking with the people that are like, whatever. It's just, the whole thing is like upsetting. Like it's cool. Like I get it, but it seems like a lot of money to be like, cool. Like, cool. So I will say this. I'm trying to be more on the more positive side about it. I feel like this is just the first. I hope it's not something like Google Glass that was just too ahead of its time. And people went, we can't adopt this. What the hell? That is my worry here. And the first thing I said to Tristan was like, Dude, it is its own computing system, which is important for people to understand. So yes, though visually you will have some similar layouts and stuff, you are relearning a new device now, essentially. And so I think there's going to be some, this is a very specific market. I see the positives in terms of some accessibility things. I see the positives for some travel reasons. Sure, watching shows on a plane and cool, but like
Only 2 hours. You got to be 2 hours or less, though, unless you got multiple
right,
battery packs or
right.
third-party monster battery packs.
Right. But mostly with the travel, I think it's in the sense of like not having to maybe bring all your devices because it's going to work seamlessly across the cloud. And if you say I just bring my MacBook Pro, I can now virtually blow up my screen to whatever size and I can edit now on a big screen without having to bring a second screen.
And it was
So
cool how they showed that. You just glance at your
big
laptop,
time.
and then
Yeah.
it pops a giant screen up in front of you. That's pretty cool. That
So I
integration.
definitely see like use cases
Mhm.
for stuff like that, or stuff like, they were going over the example of like a lot of people don't have TVs anymore. This makes a lot of sense if you live alone and you want to watch something. I just say live alone and want to watch something in this
Yeah.
example because it's like, to me, it does. I'd be friggin' pissed if Brett was wearing this thing all the effing time. And
Yeah.
like, you have a partner in this home, get that freaking thing, like, come back to reality. So, like, eventually I know where it's going and everyone's going to have one in the home and then we're all going to be doing weird augmented things together. But anyway, for this example, I do see other positives of like, oh, okay, well, you don't have to have a TV anymore. And, we all have streaming services. With that said, you're not going to spend $3,500 on a TV. Probably not. So like, I
Apple
see the
tried to say, "Oh, this will
cases.
replace your high quality sound system, your 100-inch TV,
Right.
but that means,
Sure.
but like you said, if you've got more than one person in your household, then
Yeah.
it's $3,500 times 1, times 2, times 3.
Right.
Like, really?
Right.
I see
So
the travel use case for sure, like personal
big time.
productivity platform. You notice they didn't talk a lot of specs. They didn't talk about RAM. They didn't talk about storage or anything like that. So a lot of that
No.
stuff's a little bit of a mystery.
So
If it's a computing platform, like I
exactly.
mean, they talked about
What's
the
the storage?
processors, the
We talked
M2 and
about
the
the
R1
chips.
chips. Yeah.
Yeah. So to your point, so it's a dual chip. So we've got the M2. The R1 is the chip that's supposed to be responsible for the fact that it's not making people have motion sickness. Cause that's like super common with a lot of
Yeah.
these headsets and wearables. And you're like, well,
It's a
stuff's like
fast
popping out at
pipeline.
me.
Yeah.
Yes. So they created their own R1 chip, which is very cool. I agree. I wanted to learn more about that tech behind it and like, well, cool that it syncs with your devices and works across the cloud, but like, can we store things on it? Like, if so, what type of thing? We obviously have to be able to because we're taking photos, 3D images, which how do 3D images store across your Photos app then? How does that render on an iPhone? Like, I just had a lot of other questions, which I get. It's not even out yet. You can start, or like next year, you can start getting it. I'm
Yeah,
not
they
even
said
sure, but like,
early 2024, so we'll see what
sure.
that actually means.
So I feel like it's more conceptual right now, is the long way of me saying this. It's for you to dip the toe and start understanding where they're going and what work is going to look like, what life is going to look like, what play is going to look like, because it's blending the whole thing for you. But again, I'm going to stick with, this is a very, very niche, like people that have the money to spend, that want a cool, coming to actual use case scenarios. Like, besides working at like a Twitter or a Silicon Valley company, like I look at my clients as a like perfect case. They would never allow their employees to use this device in the office because you could be standing there pretending you're working and you're just screwing around. Oh yeah, I got my screen. It's really big. Like, you just can't see it. Haha. And it's like, so they would never. So this is a personal device, like it's a very much like, they can show it all they want in the workforce, but I was like, no, it's more for you, for your own work traveling. Like,
Yeah.
no company's gonna be like, oh yeah, everybody gets a headset. Like, no, they're gonna screw around all day. Like, it's just not, at least right now, until we are in upload for real. And then everybody's wearing them and that's how we communicate. But I'm trying to be positive, you guys. I really am, but it hurts my head. Is it a necessity? Absolutely not. Is it cool? Sure. Does it concern me? Yes. Are there some aspects to it that I think also great for people that aren't mobile, can't travel, that can feel immersed in a
Mhm.
space, and like that friggin' so cool to me, like that type of use case. And like, like how I felt about Google's Project Starline, which I'm still like waiting for a few more, updates on and stuff like that, which is like, when the pandemic hit and none of us could travel and see each other, and those ways to feel more connected and immersed, like we're in person. Love it, love it, love it. Still does not replace actual human connection. And in fact, I do really, really worry that people are gonna turtle shell more into like an augmented reality that really isn't, I don't know.
And you're as we're slouching toward Ready Player One ultimately here, your concern is shared by others who have talked
Yeah.
about, as cool as this device is technically, are we heading toward a future where we are even more isolated from one another?
I'll do you one better.
I say again.
I'll do you one better.
Mhm.
The scary thing here is not that we're isolating from one another. It is that it's possible that designers at a given corporation could start to institute a common language of how we define what things look like and how we interact with things. When you think about it, Apple right now is the only one with a spatial OS. Their iconography, their glyphs, their fonts, suddenly these are going to become the de facto standard for how we see things. A corporation is about to change the way that we perceive the world. And that is not something that's happened before. That's interesting and slightly terrifying.
One could argue that they kind of took their first stab at it with the release of the iPhone, which spurred the modern smartphone revolution as well. I mean, it inspired entire TV series like Black Mirror, which was named after this slab of glass. So
now,
is this going to have the same kind of downstream effects, but even more so?
Now that layer of glass between you and the world is gone. That wall is broken, and the corporation is in your life.
So it's wild, you guys. I just
So one of the things that is the concern with this is the $3,500 price tag, of course, and many people are saying, well, yeah, it's very expensive, but they're basically just throwing everything at it. They took great pains to describe a number of pretty focused use cases, mostly focused on entertainment, whether it's photography or immersed in videos, movies, 3D. They had Bob Iger come out from Disney to dream up a bunch of potential interactive experiences, from sports to Star Wars and all that kind of good stuff. Now, the bit of the disconnect there is that this is at a developers conference. These are prices that maybe would be paid by developers to develop things, but they showed a whole lot of consumer applications as well. So it really raises the question, who is this for? There's a lot of people going, man, it's so expensive. I can buy, something that does 80% of this stuff for only, for a fraction of the price. So
I've never heard that about Apple before. Never.
Exactly. No, I think one of the key things here is this isn't merely an opening salvo, right? This is not the end. This is not the be all end all. We're going to see lighter, better, simpler, smaller devices eventually getting to the Google Glass type form factor, where these are basically not much more than a regular pair of glasses. But we've got to walk before we can run. So great. Who, in the meantime, aside from developers, who do you think the Apple Vision is actually for? Just for people
those who are bad with money.
Sorry?
Those who are bad with money.
Bad with money. Oh, you mean all of us?
You too. Do not include me in this.
I can't wait a year from now when we're doing this entire live stream with our Apple Vision and our uncanny avatars that have been scanned from our own faces.
Not to speak for Will, but you'll never take me and Will alive.
Challenge accepted.
We'll take you however we can. Once we've scanned your face,
exactly.
The power of machine learning and the transformer models.
You don't need me. You'll have my voice, my face.
We've got 115 episodes of you guys.
Ta-da!
That's going to be a fun episode. Maybe episode 200 we'll do that. Okay. Any final thoughts, Tasia, on the Apple Vision?
I give it a cool. On a scale of 1 to useful, I give it a cool.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm more like neat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we'll see.
Yeah. We
We'll
can
see.
appreciate it for what it is. It's friggin' wild, exceptional technology.
Yes.
Cannot believe we are in a world like this friggin' exists. It is actually honestly hard to comprehend because it's so insane. We can all appreciate that.
And
also,
it's cheaper than Apple does. Was it Studio Display X? Not the Studio Display, the whatever display XDR, like the fancy high end Apple monitor, which is like $5,000 US. This is $1,500 US cheaper than that, albeit very good monitor. This is an entire spatial computing platform.
Yep.
So we'll see. I will see what and as Tim and Tim Cook and some of the others like have said traditionally, they didn't say it this time. We can't wait to see what you do with this to all the developers, and that's where the rubber's going to hit the road. Like, what kind of experiences will the developers be able to create? Will they be compelling enough, or all we're going to be doing is watching movies on this thing?
Technically, where they're going, they don't need roads. Ba, ba, ba.
oh boy, here we go.
All right, let's wrap this up. Our momentous picks.
Oh yeah, we gotta do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tasia, starting with you.
I've never actually listened to this podcast, but FYI, Smartless is a podcast. But Brett and I just watched Smartless on the road. It's by Sam, what's his name, who does all the stuff in black and white. Drives me nuts. I'm actually annoyed that it's in black and white. That's my only knock on this. Because it totally takes you out of it. Okay. He's really good at when he does the interviews, and it's just like, a 2 or 3 cam like set shot interview. But I feel like for a documentary like this where they're showing
Sam
food.
Jones.
Yes, they're showing food, or they're, talking about whatever, or the
that's some
colors
great
of
food right there.
The colors of sneakers, and I'm like, wish I could tell what you're talking about because it's all in black and white. So that actually kind of took me out of it a bit. That's my only knock. However, we binged the whole thing. It's like a little mini series doc, and it's great. So Smartless, we're going to start listening to the podcast because we never had, but it's with Will Arnett and Sean Hayes and
Jason Bateman.
Thank you very much, Jason Bateman. And the whole shtick is only one of them knows who the guest is going to be, like who the celebrity guest is going to be, and then it surprises the other ones. And so they did a live tour around the States, and they made a documentary of it, and it was lovely, except the fact that it was black and white, but it was lovely.
They took that show on the road.
Yep.
Gray, your momentous pick this week.
Renfield, Nicholas Hoult, Nicolas Cage. It's a lot of Nicks. Yep, it's great. It takes place in Nowlands. Renfield is Dracula's familiar, and has realized that perhaps he could have had a comedy ensues. I can't say any more other than just go see this. It is a delight. Cedric gets chewed.
So this is basically Dracula meets 12-step programs?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Like Renfield is his original reason for going to support programs is actually quite altruistic. He's looking to not help the victims fight their monsters, but actually have his monster eat their monsters.
Oh, it's a living.
And hot.
We'll have to. Yeah, it's been on the list for a while. Have not checked it out, but we'll have to do so soon. So you think it's in the top 50% of Nicolas Cage's fare, which varies wildly in quality, as we've seen over the years.
This is I appreciate this far more than a third National Treasure.
Oh,
that's saying a lot.
Point taken. My pick of the week is kind of on theme with Apple's WWDC. It is a little mini documentary put together by the team at The Verge, and it's called Lisa, Steve Jobs' Sabotage and Apple's Secret Burial. It is a little half-hour documentary about the Lisa computer, which was the predecessor to the original Macintosh, and what happened to all the unsold units of this ill-fated platform. It tells the story of one fellow who had a company called Sun Remarketing, from whom I bought a number of products over the years. And Sun Remarketing got into the business of taking a bunch of Apple's old unloved stock and finding a new market for it. They would buy it cheap from Apple and then, sell it in the aftermarket. And there came a point in the story where Apple didn't even want them to be doing that. And it tells us what happened to all those thousands of leftover Lisa computers, and it's heartbreaking.
Garbage.
Yeah. But I would encourage you to check it out if you're at all interested in computer history and especially Apple stuff. Projects this week. Gray, are you ready to talk about the one that we didn't get a chance to talk about last week?
No. Next week.
Not next week. All right. Tasia, you have a new video for us.
Yes. I got my hands on Google Search AI. And that's kind of fun. And so I made a whole video about it. It's great. It's going to change the way you Google search, to put it bluntly. So basically, it's like what we're used to, ChatGPT, Bard, it's conversational AI, generative AI built right into your Google search. And it's sick.
Oh, too late. I'm a Bing boy now.
Are we actually sure that the CEO of Google is real? The last one of his last name are AI.
Oh,
I've never seen him in person.
Sundar Pichai.
AI.
Oh, I see what you did. I see what you did there.
It's true.
After a little bit of struggling, and it was probably the error occurring between the user and the chair, I did manage to discover that Momentous Live is indeed live on Google Podcasts. There was a while back and forth where it was showing some other podcast called Momentous, which was showing up under our control somehow. But that I made some tweaks to our website, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and it seemed to work. But then on one computer, it wasn't showing up properly, but on another it was. So I managed to find our Google Podcasts homepage. So we'll have a link for that. For those 3 or 4 people out there that use Google Podcasts as opposed to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we're also available through Amazon Music as well. So sign up on your podcast platform of choice and please leave us a rating and a review, because that helps us get found by the almighty algorithms of the various podcast platforms. But other than that, I think that's it. You can find out more about us at momentous.tv/links for all our socials. All our team, you can find out about us at momentous.tv/team, and all the podcast links are at momentous.tv/podcasts. We did it, guys. Will, we miss you. Can't wait to have you back next week to hear all about your adventures, wherever you might be. And until then, we hope your week is truly momentous.